Hello, Caterling family. Hi, it is so wonderful to be here. This is my first workshop, and I'm so excited and so blessed that I get to share this time with you all. My workshops are kind of made for real people interactions. So I am not really a huge fan on waiting till the very end of a presentation to kind of like squeeze a question in. So I would love for everybody who's joining today this morning, please feel free to chime in at any time when you have a question or when you have a thought or when something that I'm saying kind of resonates with you. Please just chime in at any time. I'm Zana Devine. I'm a international guest experience strategist, and what that means really is that I help out any business to kind of amplify on training. So training is really my baby in general. I really focus on just training our staff and training our employees in upper mid management. And today, my main topic is going to be people first. So people first in hospitality obviously is something that, is sometimes it got kind of like forgotten a little bit because we're focusing so much all the time on so many key aspects like, profits and money and revenue and driving sales and having these amazing strategies and all of that stuff. And, I come to realize in my career that so often we forget really the most important thing, which is our people. And my presentation today is really just honing in a little bit more on that. I'm usually not the speaker that speaks for hours because simply I get a little bit nervous. So I'm going to keep this very short and sweet. But obviously the foundation of any staff or of any hospitality related business is obviously their staff and their people that work in there. And today I want to challenge you all to kind of shift a little bit your mindset of going away from really what all the time matters the most, which trust me, I know it does matter. People, revenue and sales really do truly matter. But, I want to share very quickly an example where I just not too long ago actually worked with somebody together. And, this person, and I want to be very straightforward, had it all from the outside, right? It was a beautiful restaurant, beautifully overlooking the ocean, a fantastic view, great decor. I mean, he went even so far that he imported specific things from different countries to make his restaurant really stand out. And really on paper, he had it all together. Like he had a strategy together. He had his numbers together. He knew exactly how many people need to be on the floor. He nailed down, his numbers on where to order his linen and his inventory. And really, he was great at that. But, shortly after working together, I noticed that when he would, for instance, walk by his employees or he would interact with his employees, it would sound a little bit like a transaction. It didn't really have any human aspect to it where it felt like, okay, this is somebody that not only works for me, but it's actually a human being that has their own life too. And, when I started to point out those things that I would have appreciated if when he walks by, just to maybe say a kind comment, like, thank you for coming to work today. Thank you for being here today. Or, I even challenged him. I'm like, do you even know this person's name? Did you know that they have a daughter? Did you know that they have a son? And so, I tried to not obviously put him into a place where he felt bad about not doing a correct job. But I wanted to kind of point out a little bit more how important it really is when we do connect to our people, right? When we do make it a point that we're putting our people first. And and so, obviously, when I looked at the other side of it, I saw that he struggled a lot with very high turnover. A lot of people, the quickly that they entered his establishment, as quick they exited it all too. And, just by talking to other of his employees that have been there for a little bit, they told me that, it's really challenging for them to find people just because they don't really have that team culture just yet. And, team culture in a team is almost the most important thing because, if you have disengaged employees and if you have people that are not really in it for real, they're just showing up because of a paycheck, then it becomes very challenging, and especially it becomes very challenging on your revenue. And when we shift the focus a little bit more onto what is really important and how can I combine driving sales, but at the same time I'm incorporating human connection, because really, if your people don't show up every day and they're not building your dream, then you don't have a dream. And so that, to me, when I finally got through him to really help him understand that part better, I think a lot of stuff had shifted in his mindset. And so if we move on to the next slide here, I would love to talk a little bit about retention in general, because, when we start to do that at first, results changing automatically. Your results all of a sudden go to your people are being recognized, they're being appreciated, they're being valued, up to, oh, wow, my people are more engaged. Now I see them more engaged with my guests. Now I'm seeing them more kind. Because you see, kindness isn't taught by just a piece of paper. Kindness is really taught by an owner showing and displaying what kindness really is, right? That's kind of like the best way of teaching your staff anything, in my opinion, that if you do really what is necessary and what you expect of them is automatically kind of like what's going to come back to them. And so, because they see it in you, they want to kind of translate what they're being shown, right? And so, upselling in a sense too is another big part of this whole presentation, just because, we cannot just expect somebody to upsell when they really have no idea how to talk about the product that they're actually selling, right? But how do they even know about the product that they're selling when nobody in their staff, excuse me, nobody in their staff is actually taking the time to actually educate them on all the products? Because it's easy to give a waiter or a server or a hostess or a catering manager just a menu that you offer and tell them memorize this and that's all we do. But it's a whole nother extra level, and it's a whole nother extra step of service if you actually teach them really what really is in that ingredients, what goes nicely with the ingredients, what can you upsell. Like if you have in your establishment, for instance, homemade pasta or homemade noodles or olive oil or candles or whatever, you teach your staff not only to sell your food, but you're also teaching your staff, or at least you have the opportunity to teach your staff also to upsell your merch for you, what you're selling in the store. And that goes in any business, especially in catering too. When we do caterings outdoors, there's many things that we can upsell in catering. There's not just the food and I bring the food to you as a catering, but there's also upselling strategies. And so when we put people first and we acknowledge that people really do matter more than anything, service excellence really is just another level that comes just by itself almost. And upselling becomes super easy. And the fact that when we then jump into developing our staff and training our staff and giving them the right tools, employees then take more, how can I say, they take more pride, because now they feel like, oh my God, I belong to this team, because the biggest team member in this team, which is my boss, my owner, my manager, my investor, my whoever I'm actually working for, is actually involving me in the concept, is actually involving me in the business by teaching me, by taking me to the side, by helping me out with my verbiage, by helping me out with my upselling strategies. And there's no way that this isn't a win and win, because everybody's winning in this moment. You as the employer are absolutely, or as the manager, are absolutely winning, because now you're giving your staff a platform of really engaging and of really understanding of how can they really make the best out of what is currently happening on the floor. And I feel like talent, retention in general is obviously, hospitality is very known for high turnovers. That's always been like something like that. That obviously will never change, because people move on. People create life, people, have children, people get married, they find new love, they move, they this, they that. And so hospitality is actually so wonderful, to go and explore the world. But, how do you really keep your staff on board with you? Really, in my opinion, starts with actually putting them first. and really understanding what are their needs on the floor versus what are your needs as an owner wanting to get revenue out of them. And yeah, I mean, if there maybe is any questions at the time, I'm opening up the floor for any questions. But that's kind of like where where me. Oh, hold on. There was a question. What's the biggest gap most restaurants face when it comes to training for catering? I think the biggest gaps in general is that they're not training staff on really educating the product, even educating them on telling them, hey, we do have catering. We don't just have people can come to the restaurant and take food home. We actually also cater that. And catering is so big, right? Like, I mean, we can cater to a family of 4 and we can cater to a family of 100. We can cater to a group of 1,000 people. So there's obviously many aspects that we need to educate our staff on. And I do understand and I do respect that we cannot train every single staff member on all of the possible scenarios that can happen. But I am for, including that absolutely in the training phase, where we do break it down to our staff and help them out to really understand. So I think the biggest gap for me is really that people are not educated enough. What does that really mean for catering? How do we really offer that? What is the pricing? It could be already when people call the establishment and just get on the phone. Hey, I just had a quick question about catering. And then whoever is answering the phone is like, oh, so sorry, I don't do catering. I don't know. That already right there puts a damper not only on your whole picture as the establishment, but also a picture on the guest, because the guest is like, well, I don't have time. I need to jump in my meeting in the next 10 minutes. I just wanted to know what the cost of it is. You work at the establishment. Shouldn't you know that? Right. And so my mentality has always been to, in general, incorporate something where we all have semi the same knowledge. Obviously, there's specific positions for specific reasons, and I'm not trying to take away from that. And I'm not saying a server position should have the very same, intellectual knowledge on the floor like a restaurant manager or a GM. I understand that, but I'm for sharing information when it helps your staff to feel included, but more importantly, what helps your guest to really get the right answer in that moment. Because there is nothing worse other than to say, oh, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm so sorry. Because it just makes right away, the whole picture just becomes so unprofessional for the entire establishment, where it's like, oh, I don't know. And some people just brush it off and say like, oh yeah, okay, they didn't know or whatever, but I come from an international point of view. I trained many people globally. I worked globally in many different countries and many different high-end establishments. And that's really the first thing that gets taught in those kind of establishment, where it's like, you don't say no and you don't say, I don't know, even though you don't know. And it's okay to be transparent and say, unfortunately, in this moment, I do not have the answer. However, I will quickly find out. But wouldn't it be so much cooler if you do have the answer? Especially if it's just a smaller establishment, like a hotel is obviously a little bit different. There's so many outlets, there's so many things going on, so many amenities that you need to know maybe details of. But a restaurant, it's quite straightforward, right? And if you do offer catering, I think it should be more promoted. Even when the waiters step to the table, did you know, by the way, we do wonderful catering. I understand the guest didn't ask for it, but isn't it still wonderful to give every single guest that the waiters are touching each day just the information of, by the way, we offer catering, just like, by the way, we offer live music, or by the way, we have the best wagyu in town. It's all about really teaching your staff proper product knowledge. And catering is just a product like everything else that we sell. It's just a product like a glass of wine and just a product like a dessert. And so thank you for the question, by the way, and I hope I answered it. Another question, how do you balance consistency and flexibility when training for off-prem operations? I think balance in general, it's actually a very good question. So I think when we already enter the world of hospitality, we want to be very aware that when we have these interviews with our people, to really tell them that consistency and flexibility is kind of like what we really need in general, right? Like if you're not being able to be flexible and adapting into specific moods, right? Because I mean, the mood can change fast on a hospitality related floor, right? Everything can go smooth, and all of a sudden we get so busy, we get so hectic, we have no tables, or we're running out of tables, or somebody's complaining, or a bus rolls up with 20 people that we didn't encounter. Then what do we do, right? So we got to be flexible. And consistency obviously is something that, in my opinion, only comes from people seeing how it's being executed. So if they enter an establishment where consistency is Mondays, yes, Tuesdays, maybe, and Wednesdays, yeah, okay, okay, and Thursdays, again, yes, then it's very, again, easy for them to be like, oh, it's like that. Okay, I'll adapt to that, right? But if they enter an establishment where right away from the get-go, it's like, we're on point here. Like the minute our doors open, this is our protocol, this is our procedure, this is our training plan, this is how we move, because we're being shown by our upper management too, and all of our staffs around us. Then I think it's a little bit easier to maintain that, right? But when you take your stuff out of a premise, let's say you move out from a restaurant establishment, you move to a premise, like to a location that you've never been. It's really, in my personal opinion, is the plan, the strategy plan. If you have a plan and a semi itinerary of when is happening what at what time, even though the time frames maybe go up and down and they fluctuate, as long as you stick with the actual plan and you have all your tools prepared for the plan, right? Like, I mean, you cannot go off premise, for instance, with your catering and then, oh, I forgot the tongs. Well, that's bad, because I need tongs to serve, or I need spoons or plates or napkins or whatever you need, or like, the little heaters. I don't know what they're called in English. Sorry, the little heaters that go under the things where the food is on. If we forget those, that's not a good thing. So obviously I cannot execute my strategy plan if I don't have that. So a list, being organized, is probably the number one thing that I think will be very imperative when we go offsite, or when we train offsite, or when we do anything that isn't in our establishment. Because sometimes we can't just carry our whole house with us. We need to really strategically plan and pack what it is. But consistency and flexibility in general is something that should be already talked, in my opinion, in the interview. What, questions. How can I find out if you are flexible? Tell me a little bit about your own life. But yeah, and so retention, that's kind of like the main thing, and I feel like when we really focus on that, versus not so much on how do I drive revenue, but how do I actually allow my people to grow, to upsell, to drive service excellence by teaching and by training them in a proper way. So many things can be eliminated. And I'm not saying if you have a proper training plan, and if you're, sharing all your knowledge, and you're really sharing with your staff also all your products, and really showing them hands-on, or you have kind of like a designated trainer in your house that really does that all the time and kind of shadows everybody, that, all of it will be perfect and you won't have any issues. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that your whole procedure will be a little bit different, and especially in the points of the guest. Right? Like the minute a guest enters an establishment that is well run and that is well organized and that has boundaries and rules in place that are not necessarily spoken out at all to the guest, but known internally in their own home between their own staff, because they have regularly staff meetings, or because it's being emphasized on regularly basis. I feel a lot of things can all of a sudden change, and this is actually in this example that I brought up with this client of mine that had the whole shiny outside, but the people part was so missing. And when we started to incorporate that, and we started to have monthly team member meetings only, just by incorporating monthly meetings with your team, which I personally, monthly is okay. I would prefer it daily, a quick shift meeting, or at least a quick check-in. This is what's happening. These are the guests that are coming in, or this is the catering situation that we have going on for this and this guest, this and this many people. Do we have everything? Is everybody here? Like a quick little group gathering with everybody, and just also checking in with anybody on like an emotional and like a human basis, right? Because I'm really believing that we're moving away from this whole, this is how it has to be, and this is just it, and you got to perform, and da 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 da. It's it's about being internally at peace and at mental health, right? And if we see somebody maybe that, for instance, shows up to work and we know that they maybe just lost a parent, or they just are going through a divorce, or we know that their child is sick at home with a babysitter, we want to be kind about that, right? Like we want to include also never forgetting that we're still human in all of this, and we do go through things, right? But we do show up for the job because we need the money, and we kind of like our workplace too, hopefully in many cases. But life happens to everybody, right? And so when we have monthly meetings where we allow our people really to talk, where we allow our staff really to voice what it is that they actually need on the floor, it gives them an opportunity again to feel like I'm part of this team. I'm not just a number. I'm not just a transaction. I'm not just, somebody that drives revenue for somebody else and I make my own tips and that's it. But it's actually, I'm belonging to like my own restaurant, hotel, catering, country club community, right? And so that's really what people are after, in my opinion. And I think that's always what people are after. And I think in general, that's really what hospitality is. Hospitality is this beautiful place of like warmth and feeling welcomed and hearing the glasses clinking and people laughing, and you move through and you smell the good smell of good food and fresh rosemary and fresh garlic, and you're like, ooh, and I think that's really what hospitality is. And the minute we translate that on our people, on our team, on our staff, why would they go anywhere? Why would they go anywhere if they feel respected and valued and appreciated? They don't need to go anywhere, in my opinion, if they don't have to. Oh, great. Another question. What's the link between empowered employees and great guest experiences and catering? Wait, I didn't understand. What's the link between empowering employees and great guest service and catering? I think that's the same thing, empowering employees and guest experiences and catering, it's the very same thing. Because listen, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what guests we're serving. If it's a guest that we serve because we served them a catering, or we bought catering to their home, to their establishment, their business, or their wherever, or if it's a guest that simply enters our establishment, the empowerment, how do we really do that for our staff, is the same, which is encouragement, kindness, telling them what they're doing right, but also being authentic in a kind, respectful way, and telling them what they're not doing right, how they can be better. Like, I cannot expect you to do something better if I don't give you my secret sauce of how I believe you could do it better. At the end of the day, it's my home, it's my rule. So I have a concept, right, that I truly believe in. And that concept, I have to be able to translate to you. And by empowering you, in my opinion, is really by respecting you, first of all. I respect you for showing up today. I respect you for being here. Thank you that you came to my home, and serve me, in a sense, and my guests, versus you going out on your own and building your own dream, right? Because every person on any floor is a diamond that just needs a little, polishing. And I think empowering is so vivid in general. How do you maintain culture during busy, high pressure moments when it matters most? Having a plan. Having a plan is always a good thing. When you really have a plan set in stone, and you know exactly what your procedure is because you've talked to your team about that. You executed it many times before. You talk about these in your monthly meetings, in your weekly meetings, in your daily meetings. You remind them, hey, if it gets too stressful, if it gets to this, remember to do that. Simple things, take a quick breather, take a quick breather. Teach anybody in the moment when they really are feeling overwhelmed to step back in the back office, take a quick breather. And if they cannot handle, to ask for help. It is completely okay to train your staff really that nobody is alone in any section of any in any section in any establishment. You know, like you're not alone out there. You have a team that is going to back you up. And when your team does back you up, this is exactly when you see that happening in your own team where people just jump in without being asked, that's when you know that you're doing an amazing job as an owner, because this is really what matters the most, right? Because high pressure happens all the time, especially in hospitality. It gets busy. It gets stressful. You got to remember a whole lot of things, right? You got to put in your courses right. You got to remember, what is this person drinking? What's that? You got to go and refill wine, refill water, refill this, refill that, entertain children if there are any children on the floor. I mean, there's so much that goes on, right? But I think if you really talk to your staff and really teach them to just calmly execute, but if they don't know what there is to execute on, then that's a problem. So I think it starts way before the pressure even hits, which is have a training plan set in stone. Tell them step by step. Like executing fantastic, outstanding service always has steps. First you go, you introduce yourself, you talk to the guest, you introduce the concept, you introduce yourself, right? And then so on and so on. And everything has a step. And this is the same in executing any single step in any establishment of hospitality. So I hope that answered the question. Can you share an example of a team or brand that got hospitality culture right and what stood out? Yes, I can. Very, very, very long time ago, I was part of this wonderful, wonderful restaurant that, in my opinion, was the best restaurant team-wise that I've ever worked in my entire career. And it's called Café La Europe. It's in Palm Beach Gardens in Florida. And what I loved so much about the entire culture there is, number one, everybody understood to even get inside of this restaurant, to even work there, you had to be a very, very, very good waiter in general, or a very good manager, a very good hostess, a very good anything, right? You had to be really good at what you do. But when you did enter, finally, there were kind of, I'm sorry if I'm saying this word wrong, hierarchies, you know? So it was very clear from the very beginning that there was servers, there were upper men servers, very high. And then every time when somebody new entered, there was kind of like levels, right? Yet I never once felt, or anybody else that I worked with in that time, that no matter on what level they entered, that they were a different breed of the team, that the really highest servers. Because everybody, what I just described, worked together. If people watched out for each other, people looked out for each other, people had their eyes on everybody's station at the same time, just like they took care of their own section that they obviously got designated to, which I think it's a wonderful thing. But people still watched out for anybody else. And there was never like, oh, it's my table, or why is she getting this table? Why is he? Everybody always was happy because it showed, and it was a whole pool house, right? It was a whole pool house, which I personally actually don't like. Me personally, I prefer to work on my own tips. But in this scenario, I learned how effective it can really be to work in a pool house where you being tipped out on specific things. And I never was unhappy with my tips, you know, because that team environment, the culture of the team, how we moved together on the floor, how we helped each other out, how we did site work, how we set up the restaurant for the next shift, how we converted the restaurant for many functions. Like, it was incredible. It was incredible. And I think this is really what true culture is in a hospitality related environment, is really, how do I get my people to really work together as a team, right? How do I really make that happen, to really get my people together? And it turns so wonderful back to my main message today, which is really, you're putting people first. That's how you get there. Without your people, you have nothing, you know. Without your people, you have no restaurant. Without your people, you have nobody cooking your food. Without your people, you have nobody seating the people. Without your people, you have nobody driving the catering truck, preparing the catering. cooking the food for the catering. Like it all goes together, and it starts with the humans that we take on, that we invite in our home. And yeah, after we implemented, monthly meetings, and we brought in somebody like me, obviously, that kind of helped navigate this whole process for a specific amount of time, a small, short period. Obviously, so many things changed. So many things changed. The culture changed. People felt they're thriving in their own establishment. People felt like man, I'm a part of this. They took ownership, like, with pride. They're like, no, this is not how we do this here. And then when new people enter, they're like, hey, look, this is how we roll here. This is the standard of this, and everybody's is getting with it, and our guests, most importantly, are receiving the most benefit. And I think this is really what is so important to never forget, is that we're doing this really for people out there, for guests, for guests to feel good. Like when they receive a nice meal, when they receive kind service, when they're being approached with respect and a little humor, and and you bring out your own little personality, like that's really what people are after. It's not just I'm delivering food to you and that's it. It's also connecting, it's also just like showing, hey, I'm so happy for this occasion, no matter what occasion it might be, or I'm so sad for the occasion, and showing empathy. I mean, food goes in every part of life, food goes for celebration, but also for sad memories and sad occasions, like when we celebrate people not being here anymore, right? And so it's a good thing to be really, how can I say this? It's always a good thing to just really look at the bigger picture, and not just go from what is it that I need currently from my people, and what is it really that I'm wanting out of them, but what is it also that I can give back in this moment, right? Because you're going to be owners and managers and investors and people that really run floors. They're planting seeds with these people. They're saying sentences, they're teaching teachings that will never be forgotten, and that people might even just use in other life aspects of their lives too. So we should never forget that when we touch people, we just never know how can that have an impact on somebody else's life, right? And yeah, you guys, I think that was sort of it for me. To you, I'm so excited to hopefully see you next month too. A big thank you again on the creators of Caterlinked. I'm so happy and I'm so grateful to be a part of this. Thank you so much. And if there's no further questions, if we can just go one slide more up, and before I say one more, thank you. One more. I'm sorry, you guys. I had problems this morning with my login. So, the most amazing people helped me out there, to make this work today. But yes, people first. People first. This is really the message today. If you didn't catch it, thank you, by the way, for watching the replay whenever you're watching it. But let's put our people first. Let's really get together and help each other out and educating people, and everything else will follow. If we do the right thing, revenue flows automatically. That's always been like that. And doing the right thing will never be not rewarded. Like it's always going to be rewarded by the universe, in my opinion, that when we're doing the right thing. But with that being said, if there's no more questions, that I'm totally happy to answer, and thank you for all the questions so far, I would say, Caterlink family, this was it from me. I'm Zana Devine. Please catch me at my next one, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, whenever you're watching this.